Hey guys, Bump here, bringing you this 10.1.5 Unholy Death Knight Mythic Plus guide. This has been quite a long time in the running. I haven't played that much Unholy in a while, so apologies for that. But here we go, we got the guide. I'm going to go through the rotation, talents, stat priority, gear, everything, as well as do some commentary on gameplay once we finish on that. Starting off though, let's talk about the state of Unholy in Mythic Plus, right? Is it good? Is it meta? Where does it sit? So unfortunately, at the moment, Unholy isn't that great. And I would say it's primarily because Frost is pretty damn good. Unholy does good damage. Like you'll see me here, I end up at like 260k overall. But Frost just generally does more. You can do like get 300k overall in a Brackenhide, for instance. Furthermore, Frost does well in every dungeon. It doesn't matter. Whereas Unholy kind of need to have this big pool thing going on for it to actually be able to leverage its DPS fully. As soon as we get like 3 targets, Unholy really doesn't do that well, which is a big issue because a lot of dungeons have, smaller target counts, that kind of thing. I don't know. We also have the issue that we are currently running Defile, which does tend to clog up the ground, making it difficult to see mechanics, which means that you will die more, which is also not great. But overall, the reason Unholy isn't doing as well is because Frost is doing better, right? Still, you can obviously play it, and as you can see here, you can pump out some real proper DPS. When it comes to talent builds, there's only really one which is the most relevant. You can see it up here, and it's what I'm running in this run here. Essentially, this kind of works every week. You don't swap it out for Tyrannical or whatever. I don't think it's worth to go for a more single target build because you do tend to drop a lot of AoE if you go for it. There's a potential one where you do kind of like the Raid Defile build if you've seen that. But generally, what I'll do is I just run this build because, it does okay in single target, does well in AoE. It's very versatile, so why shouldn't you run it? Kind of thing. You can see here on my defensive talents, or my cast talents, sorry, I do pick up Will of the Necropolis. This does sacrifice, 2% DPS maybe, but it makes you incredibly tanky. So I quite like doing it just for, not dying those times where I'm standing shit, that kind of thing. It's up to you, right? I like it, but some people might say that, well, if you play perfectly, you don't need that defensive capability, but it's up to you. When it comes to stats, what we're looking for here is generally quite a balanced amount of mastery, crit, and versatility. Like if you can get roughly the same amount of each, it's good. AoE, you have mastery and crit being like your best 2 stats. However, you don't want to go all in on that because it does sacrifice some single target. So it's a good idea to get some balance to kind of do, you do good AoE, but also good single target. So you kind of don't, mess that up too much. Versatility is kind of whatever and should be as low as possible. It doesn't scale that well anywhere. For the gear, you can see my character up here. You can have a look at that. Also, you can see my stats right up there. So for the gear, we have embellishments, of course. For those, I would run, there's 3 ones which are powerful. So the haste legs, the versatility wrist, and the lariat are all good in Mythic Plus. And, just have a look, sim yourself in a dungeon slice scenario and see which one works best for you. I think I'd opt to, haste legs are good because they're really good for Frost. So if you pick those up, you can run them in both scenarios. And then probably the lariat once you have enough sockets, which you should have at this point, I would say. Other than that, we obviously have trinkets. What we want to run is Vial Animated Blood as your active unused trinket. It just has great synergy with our Unholy Assault. So every 1.5 minutes, you can use an Unholy Assault and the Vial. You can just macro those together, which is great. You get that like freaking burst that we want to see in a Mythic Plus scenario. For the second trinket, you can see I'm running Anvil here, but that's not like some secret tech. I literally haven't looted anything better. You want to run something that is passive, like the Ominous trinket or the the Nefarian one. Also, the haste trinket for a new dungeon can also be solid in a Mythic Plus scenario. You just get something passive that gives you nice stats. That's the kind of vibe we're going for. All right, let's think. When it comes to consumables, I'm running the crit vial. It's by far the best one. You just run that, and then you can just like Rune of Fallen Crusaders always. Put on your normal enchants. I have a long list there. You can opt to run avoidance a bit more if you want to prioritize being a bit more defensive, but I generally run the speed ones just to you know, since we are generally quite slow. All right, just give me 1 second. I need to think if I forgot anything. I don't believe so, and I think we're ready to move on to the rotation. This is by far the most important aspect. This hasn't changed much. You know, it's kind of the same thing as it was last patch, but I will still talk you through it and discuss, you know, the kind of the core aspect of it. So first of all, how do you deal damage as an Unholy Death Knight Myth Plus? Well, there's a couple of things. You do lots of damage from your dots. So Virulent Plague, and then you have Frost Fever and Blood Plague as well, because we talented to those. When you combine with Ebon Fever and Plaguebringer, that's a lot of taking damage, and it's going to be a big chunk of your overall. So a big part of playing an Unholy Myth class is maintaining that Plaguebringer buff, as well as maintaining your dots. Like, those are very high up in priority list. Furthermore, we also run Defile. So Defile gives you a mastery buff. It stacks up to 8, and it allows you to cleave with Skirt Strike. And quite a lot of your gameplay will be maintaining that buff, as well as, you know, just popping it down to do good cleave damage kind of thing. So that's your second kind of priority. So, you know, popping down Defile to keep up dot and do lots of cleave. And then we also have the active damage, which comes in the form of Epidemic. Epidemic means every target that has your dot flares up, so it deals damage to that target and everything around it, and it scales really well in an A scenario. So you get this kind of quadratic behavior up to quite a lot of targets, like 9 I think it is. And a big part of playing Unholy is about generating runic power so that you can spend it on Epidemic, right? That's a big part of playing Unholy properly. Right, so let's talk about, you know, how those general ideas come into play in a general pool, right? So how do you actually initiate a pool? So I have it up here. It's from the Wowhead guide on the right. So what you want to do is, as you run into the pack, you're going to pop down Defile on the mobs, right? So that's like, you know, you're far away. You can do that as you run in. This is to instantly get that mastery buff going. And also means that as soon as you come into range, you can go stand in your Defile and hit Skirt Strike. We do this because we want to start our Plaguebringer. We do that before we actually apply our dots, because generally we follow that with Unholy Blight, and if we have Plaguebringer already, it stacks Unholy Blight off quicker. Anyway, so you run in your Skirt Strike. The next GCD is about applying dots, so generally Unholy Blight, use Outbreak if you don't have Unholy Blight ready. And then we use all our other cooldowns. So depending on what we have ready, that would be Dark Transformation, Unholy Assault, Apocalypse, Abomination Limb, and a Power Rune Weapon, right? Those just come that in a row. It doesn't matter that much which order, as long as you do Unholy Assault before Apocalypse. Generally you do Dark Transformation early, but that's kind of the vibe. Once you've got that out of the way, right, the rotation goes into this kind of Epidemic build and dump kind of gameplay. So you dump your runic power with Epidemic, and then you refresh your Defile when that comes up, and then you just Skirt Strike to burst the wounds that have been generated on a pack. You get wounds from your pet during Dark Transformation, right? And then those are kind of like the 3 buttons you press. So as you're standing on Defile, you hit Skirt Strike to generate runic power. You spend that runic power on Epidemic, and when Defile runs out, you pop it down again. 3 buttons, right? You might think, right, hang on, I haven't heard you talking about Festering Strike. So Festering Strike really isn't used much in AoE scenarios. If you're standing in a Defile, it's much better to simply just press Skirt Strike. It deals much more damage, right? And, you know, generating those wounds, kind of whatever. So you'll actually only hit Festering Strike in a few scenarios. So one of them is if you don't have Defile down, right? Maybe you don't have any more stacks of it, right? Then you're going to press Festering Strike so you can build wounds in your primary target. You're also going to use it if you needed to set off Apocalypse in the opener. So you only have an Unholy Assault every 1.5 minutes. So when you don't have that and you want to use Apocalypse, you can use Festering Strike to build up those wounds. You shouldn't use it twice. You should use it a single time and then kind of Apocalypse on that target, regardless of how many wounds you have. That's pretty much AoE rotation. So just quick recap. You run in, you pop down Defile, follow up with Scout Strike, apply your dots, pop all the cooldowns, and then go into your Epidemic Scout Strike Defile rotation. That's it. It's generally a bit simpler than it usually is, but hopefully that's very approachable. When it comes to single target, right, what's going on there? Well, it's kind of the same thing. The only thing that actually changes is that we have a much higher priority on Festering Strike. So when you attack a single target mob, what you want to do is build wounds with Festering Strike and burst them with Scout Strike. It's not like in AoE where we kind of don't care. We do want to actually have wounds on the main target. Obviously, both in AoE and single target, keep applying your dots. They do end up dropping quite quickly. So whenever they start dropping, you want to hit that outbreak to refresh them. Right. When it comes to Army of the Dead, this should just be used on cooldown pretty much. Obviously, there's synergy between Army of the Dead and your tier set because it gives you instantly 20 stacks. However, it doesn't really matter in Mythic Plus because if you follow when I play, like you're spamming Epidemic so much, you're going to hit 20 stacks regardless. So like getting those 20 stacks with Army, whatever. It does matter for the first pull of the dungeon because otherwise you wouldn't get stacks there, but otherwise you kind of like, you know, you get those anyway. But still, you should use Army. It's a great button to press to get some priority damage on a single mob, and you should just try and leverage it as much as possible in any dungeon run. You don't want to sit on it too long. You don't want to wait with it for bosses. Some scenarios, maybe if you know that there's a boss where you have Bloodlust coming up, you know that there's maybe 1.5 minutes until that point, then you can hold on to it. Otherwise, just use it on CD. It's a big thing that not pressing Army enough is an issue. All right, so that's the guide portion of this video. So what we do now is just commentary. So if you came here just to understand the specs better, you can happily leave now because I probably won't say much more. I always end up, realizing I forgot something in the end. And then, I come back and I'm like, oh, yeah. I forgot about this. But, let's just do commentary. So what's going on with this run? So I think, let's see, I need to make this bigger. So we currently did a 350k overall. I was thinking at this point, right, my goal was to get 300k total, right? At the end of the day, 300k overall, I was like, that would have been a good number. Doesn't end up being that way, unfortunately. Is what it is. We do have an augmentation evoker, which helps a lot, but I think we would have needed something like a Shadow Priest here with PI to bump that up a little bit more. All right, so we're just dealing with middle pool here. What are our priorities? Well, we are going to be using Epidemic as much as possible. So whenever I have Runic Power, I'm just going to press that. We can see the dots are running out, so I'm going to refresh. We're going to refresh our Defile. Let's see. Ideally, what you want to happen in any given pool is that you're going to chain the Defile buff as much as possible. right? You can do 4 chains if you do it properly. So essentially, the buff you get from Defile lasts for, I think it's around 4 seconds. And this essentially gives you enough time. So if you start with 2 charges, you refresh it just before that buff goes away, you're going to get 4 full kind of buff periods. In AoE, it's a bit tricky because obviously having Defile down means that you can cleave. So sometimes you do want to pop it down a bit earlier. But also, the pulls are generally not that long, so on and so on. In single target, it's kind of more important to do this kind of extension. So wait until you have 4 stacks, and then you pop it down, and you reapply just before it finishes, kind of thing. But AoE, I kind of just drop it down when I see that the buff, is about to finish. Not sure what happened there, where the boss being pulled, but it's what it is. On this boss fight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I dot up the ads as soon as they spawn. I'm going to use Epidemic to kill them, and then also pop down Defile so I can do some cleave. And we're pretty good at this, right? We can do quite a lot of damage on those ads. Our dots tick high. There's 4 targets, so Epidemic is going to do quite a lot. So generally can deal with this quite well. You can see we have Bloodlust in 50 seconds. My army is going to come up, roughly about that time. I don't know. We'll see. So now we can see our cooldowns. We have, let's see, Blight, DT, and Apocalypse. And Abomination Limb. So we're just going to pop all of those. And I'm going to build up to 4 wounds. That's important on single target. We do want to do that before we press Apocalypse. You can see there's the first refresh on Defile. And I do it close to it running out. I use Outbreak to dot up the ads, and then just going to do some Epidemic there. Defile's about to run out. I do miss that refresh, unfortunately. So I essentially press the GCD a bit too late. That will happen, so it doesn't matter that much. And now we can refresh the next one. So Defile here. You can see my weak auras. Those you can get those. By the way, there's a link in the description. So I can see there that, I know that my Defile needs to be refreshed, right? So I just do that as soon as possible. All right, we popped on army. We can time that nicely with Unholy Assault and our other cooldowns, which is great. You can see here as well, we use Berserking, our Racial, to buff up those mobs to scale really well with haste, so that's a good idea. And we're sitting at 160k overall in this fight, so doing some good damage. I don't think I knew whether or not we were going to lost her. Otherwise, I would have saved army for it. Because, would have been like 20 seconds. And then I would have gotten much more value out of it. So, that's too bad. Interesting, when you are being consumed, you can't put down your Defile there. I don't know why that doesn't work. You can obviously hit the boss, but I'm not sure if there's a sense of direction when you're in there. That doesn't make sense. I don't know. Anyway, we just keep doing our thing. Dot up the ads as soon as they spawn. Epidemic to kill them. Make sure we have our Playbring up and going. Not that much going on with Unholy single target with this build. Like, we can't really screw up. So that's good at least. I do like to, you can obviously, I did go in for the Grasping Vines. It's a good idea for Unholy. We are tanky, so we're unlikely to die. We can't like cheese it in any way, but still, good target to do it on. All right, there we go. Dot those bad boys up. Gonna just spam Epidemic. We obviously have Blinding Sleet here to help interrupting. So I will commit that when appropriate. But yeah, we're using Epidemic here to deal tons and tons of damage. And the boss is going to go down in roughly 3 minutes, which is what I think you would expect on a tyrannical boss fight. Alright, next, we obviously don't have a priest here. With a priest, you can skip the mini-boss that comes up here. But now, I don't think we cared about... It's not high enough to, it's not a very tight key for us. We do enough damage, so we're just going to kill this guy. You can't do anything to avoid Stink Breath, unfortunately, so you're just going to have a sit. You're going to eat it. I don't know why that's not magical, but it's what it is. It can stand on the edge here on the whirlwind and still hit the ad without taking damage, which is good. You can see here I'm just popping my cooldowns. I have my defiles down and running. Unfortunately, get disoriented there, so I miss my refresh window. But like refreshing defile doesn't matter that much. It's not like a huge deal. It's a nice thing, something you should aim to do. But if you miss it, it's kind of like, not too bad. Alright, so I have my army ready, but I'm gonna have to stick with it here. You don't want to use it when something is just about to die. Obviously, we gain very little value, so much better to hold on to it, and when you're going to use it on the next boss. This region, we just skip all of it. Easy peasy, you can just walk past without much trouble. And then we're going to pull some mobs into the next boss, and we're going to do some big burst damage there. And that's going to be like a classic AoE pull, so lots of epidemics coming out, popping our cooldowns, Defile Down, Scourge Strike, Blight, DT, and all the sword, blah blah blah. And then we're just going to focus the main boss. Alright, there we go. So army thrown in, Defile, Scourge Strike, Blight, DT, actually a rune weapon, abomination limb. I do use an epidemic there before actually popping apocalypse, just so I don't overcap on runic power. Refresh my defile, I was about to run out, and then just spam epidemic. And you can see we're sitting at 500k DPS, so pretty juicy there. If you run Frost DK though, man, Frost DK is so good on the bosses, because both the first one and this one is generally like 3-4 target cleave, and those obliterate hits are insane. Anyway, as soon as hyenas come up, we're going to dot those up. Unfortunately, I'm going to walk right into a trap here, get myself stuck, but doesn't matter that much. Cooldowns are back and ready. We're just going to pop those ASAP. I'm going to miss my... just hit that Defile Refresh window. Make sure my play bring us up as always. And then that's pretty much the fight. We do quite good DPS here, because I don't think the Paladin is great at killing those hyenas, so a lot of our DPS comes from, those dots ticking. And I'm going to make sure I refresh my dots as soon as they elapse. You can see the hyenas don't have dots, so I swap to them, refresh the dots, and just keep using Epidemic. There's definitely an argument here to not use Epidemic. Like, Death Call would do more proto damage and probably should be what I'm pressing, but it doesn't, matter that much. Alright. When our units are stacked on the boss, I would definitely use Epidemic, but when they're farther away, I would use Death Call. Probably is the better play. Yeah, no problem at all there. Just dealing with the hyenas easily. And the boss is about to go drop. After this boss, we do like a huge pull, so I'm quite keen on making sure I have my cooldowns available for that. So I'm probably not going to spend Dark Transformation and Unholy Blight here, as the boss is about to drop in like, 10 seconds or so. But we'll see. No. Alright, boss is dead. Next pull. We can see I have army ready in 30 seconds, which is unfortunate. Would have been nice to just have that just now, but you can see I have 20 stacks on the tier set, so it doesn't matter that much. Defile, Scourge Strike, Blight, DT, pop on my cooldowns. One Festering here just to potentially actually hold on to my Apocalypse there. I felt like I wanted to prioritize just spending those Epidemics. Obviously, Epidemics gets really well with target counts, so when I have all those mobs, I want to spend those Epidemics to just maximize my DPS. You can see here we are very close to having full count, which is good, because we can skip a lot of the packs here. Even though, with a priest you can do a bit more, I think, but generally you can run past the mobs, which is convenient. So if you mount up, you can see there to the left, we just want to run past them, no problem. Jump through this thing, which can be a bit tricky, but there we go. Get stuck in the log. Run around, nearly pull. Whoops. And then we just have one more pull, and then we're going to move into the boss. And I think I commit army here. Oh, yeah. Obviously, we're going to have army for the boss anyway. It's going to take us like 3 minutes, so. And we have Bloodlust in 3 minutes, so I felt like, just going to use army here, and then have it up again at some point during the boss. Unholy actually does pretty well on the final boss here when it comes to the totems. Our damage profile is quite flat with this build, so which means that we kind of we don't rely on cooldowns to kill the totems. Essentially, the most important part of playing Unholy is actually controlling your pet. So make sure you have a pet attack bound somewhere so that you can control the pet, immediately swap to the totem. That's going to make a big difference. Alright, we go in. Going to trigger that Festamite. No, sorry, not Festamite. Plaguebringer. Okay. And then we're just going to hammer on the boss there. When the totem spawns, I'm going to put down Defile. And then I'm going to move my pet to attack. And see, there we go. Charges in. And then that easily gets killed. It's good to put them Defile because it means we can cleave as well on the boss, By the way, here's my damage breakdown. You can take a look to see exactly where the damage comes from. I also realized I haven't talked about Festamite windows at all here, but generally you don't need to care. Like if you do the rotation as I've talked about, you will naturally build a lot of Festamite stacks, and you don't really need to care about specifically playing around it. So that's good, I guess. Alright, we just keep doing this boss, right? Make sure we dot up the totem, swap our pets, and I dealt the most damage to totems by far in this group. That's like 6 million or something. So we're not terrible at it at all. We can swap targets pretty quickly and do respectable damage. So as long as you don't make swap pets. When you look at the damage breakdown, you can see what I talked about early in this run, like where our damage comes from. It's Epidemic, it's our dots, right? Some Defile damage, but that's pretty much it. For this fight, by the way, you can use Anti-Magic Shell when he does his big burst. That's like the one dangerous part of this fight, so just AMS every one of those and you're going to be all okay. Alright, so we have our Lost Top coming out, which is great because we can also see we have army, so I'm able to time those two together quite nicely. Just need to make sure we actually use it. So I think at some point we're going to realize that, hang on, we should use Bloodlust. Let's see, so that didn't die very quickly, but we'll still survive. Right. So times for Lust, hopefully. I think I might actually miss out there because they were not using it appropriately. This is going to absolutely die here. So I just swap all my pets and then boom, dead. There we go. Boss is going to drop, appreciate all you tuning in. Hopefully this is going to help out, give you some tips and tricks you can use to play Unholy and Mythic class. As I said, we do good damage. The main problem is that we don't do great in smaller target counts, and Frost just generally does a bit better. In those scenarios, you end up with most of the top end players playing Frost, which means that, when you look at sub creation and like Radar IO, it looks like Frost is much better. Whereas the actual difference isn't that great in reality. Alright, we still haven't gotten Bloodlust. I assume we'll get it at some point. Might have been able to two-chest it if we got Bloodlust with my army there, but it's what it is. Right, leave a comment down below, let me know, do you enjoy Unholy Myth Plus? What would you want to see different, except Defile? I also want that to fixed. Everyone wants to, so. Other than the Defile, actually, do you want anything else to change, that kind of thing? As always, like and subscribe. Appreciate everyone from just watching. Helps out a ton when it comes to, I don't know, getting more views. Making sure people hopefully play the game better. All right. What's instead? 260k overall. Pretty happy about that. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.